Good morning, everyone, and happy New Year's Eve. Last day of 2020. Pretty soon it will be 2021, and we'll still be here. We'll be just the same. But nonetheless, these are real watershed moments, so I thought I'd talk this morning about New Year, New Thoughts. Let's start with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Friend, Beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, Beloved Master Paramhansa Yogananda, Saints of all religions, dearest friend Swami Kriyananda, humbly we bow to all. Guide us, that we may open our hearts, our minds, and our spirits to a revolutionary, transforming, transcendent, exquisitely joyful way to be. We are on this long journey, and every opportunity we can take to reaffirm our divine destiny, give us the energy and the courage to embrace it wholeheartedly. We seek joy. We desire to share the blessings you shower upon us with all whom we meet. Give us the clarity, the willingness, and the expansive hearts to do so. Om. Peace. Amen. You know, this has been for almost everyone, this 2020 year. It's just been an enforced change for everybody on the planet. I mean, we're all finding our way in a slightly altered world, and now we're all hopeful that things are going to go back to normal, sometime in this year. So we're trying to put this one behind us and put another more positive expectation on the future. Actually, none of us know. We're just here. We're just drifting along and hoping for the best. Of necessity, in my position of trying to make sense out of things, which is basically what my role in life has been, what my goal in life has been since I was a small child, is try to make sense out of things. And then with, of course, the tremendous help of Swami Kriyananda for the majority of my adult life, all of my adult life, it's just given me a lot that I do my best to pass on appropriately with as much magnetism as I can. And years and holidays come and go. As you get older, they all just sort of flow into each other. And I was really just letting the new year pass. And then some very actually interesting thoughts occurred to me, new resolutions for myself, which might also be helpful for others. It started when a friend of mine, and this is no surprise, recommended that we might enjoy watching, all of us, our community might enjoy watching this new Pixar movie, which is called Soul, S-O-U-L, Soul. He's a jazz musician, so it's probably the soulful music of jazz, and it's also soul in the most expected sense of it, which is the non-physical continuing part of ourselves. Pixar, I don't have to tell you, everybody in the world knows what Pixar is, and this animated filmmaking, which is really astonishing. I can see how generations of young people would set their goal to be able to work at Pixar. If that were my interest, I would certainly set my cap for it too. And the film itself, which is real good. I'm not really here to either give a movie review or to encourage you to see it. I don't need to, because everybody else in the world is going to be doing that. And I enjoyed it. It was just delightful. I don't need deep philosophy from it, because I have deep philosophy from other sources. But here's what really struck me about it, and this is what made me feel I had something to say. The theme of the movie is this jazz musician, and his day job is teaching a middle school band or a high school band. You can imagine a good musician in such a position. And he's never really gotten anywhere as a musician, and he finally gets his chance. He finally gets a gig with a great little group, and he's really on his way, but unfortunately he falls into a manhole and dies. And even though that sounds kind of grim, it's not a grim movie, it's actually quite cheerful. And then he goes to to the astral world. He goes to the astral world where all these beings are, and then there's these little sort of little blue bowling ball shaped things that have little faces that turn out to be little beings, individuals who are about to incarnate on Earth. And then so we have this whole thing in the astral world. We have this whole thing about death. We have a whole thing about also learning how to live properly. What is really the purpose of life? Why are we here? What makes life worthwhile? And this is the whole theme of this movie. And it involves some kind of far out characters, and it's really fun. It's a very fun movie. And very creatively portraying an astral universe, very creatively showing how the dimensions are very different and how the material plane intersects with the astral plane, without ever being actually theological. There's no deity in it. It's not theological, and yet it matches pretty much anybody's theology without offending anyone's theology. I understand it was deliberate on their part. But what really struck me was this is a mainstream movie. This is going to, millions of people are going to see this movie. And the subject is death, the astral world, being born into the world, having an intention before you're born. Why are you born? And they even had this one scene where there's this goofy character. He's not dead. He just is able to move between the worlds because he's an artist and he gets lost in the zone. Lots of fun things. But they have humor about this character assuming like a meditation position. He puts his fingers into the recognizable meditation mantra, recognizable to me, and he talks about closing your eyes and tuning in to the crown chakra. And it's done very humorously. But I'm watching that and I'm realizing, oh my gosh, meditation, tuning into the crown chakra is so well known to the whole planet that we can even make a joke about it. Now, in order to be able to make humor out of something, people have to understand it enough to know what the reality is, what an odd perspective would be. You can't laugh at something if you have no idea what we're even talking about. And I suddenly realized that this planet is in great shape. I've spent so much time this last year sort of holding my own hand in a certain sense and holding the hands of so many other people about just hang in there. You know, this is a transition age. You know, Master said there were going to be these hard times and just all this stuff. And I mean, I think I could be rightly accused of working so hard to keep us from not freaking out that I really haven't appreciated sufficiently how well things are going, that it's actually working. In just a few short years, the whole planet is transforming. I mean, because you can depend. I mean, a company like that who's making a movie, who's making the movie for money, and they're making it, they are a creative leader. There's no question. I mean, that company is a creative leader in countless different ways. It was founded by Steve Jobs, I understand, who was a creative leader led by Paramahansa Yogananda to change the world in so many ways. But the good news is it's actually working. And now this is in multiple combinations. It's like, yes, of course, challenges are coming, but the challenge is not the point. The point is, how do we respond to it? You know, when we're being squeezed into a small space, who do we come out on the other side of it? And I've tended to be, I like to see the whole picture. And I need to be able to confront my fears. And I need to be able to look at what I'm afraid of and find a way to go forward. I can't just pretend that I'm not afraid. So for that reason, I've had to think my way through the difficulties. But the end of every difficulty has always been that this is going to be an ever-increasing time of light. Swamiji has often said to us that Ananda will thrive during difficult times because we are the end point that people are going to. We, meaning those of us who understand our relationship to a greater reality. And there's a lot of folks coming with us all over the place. It's an ascending age. Now, this appreciation of how pop culture is catching up. I remember when I was going out to teach classes in the early 80s, and I was talking to Swamiji, going out, meaning I lived at Ananda Village, which was very remote. And my work for a few years was really to just travel, mostly on the West Coast. But I spent weeks and weeks at a time away from my my residence address, in order to talk to people about Master's teachings and help people learn about these teachings. And I mentioned to Swami that one of the most popular classes I could teach was about the chakras. He said, really? The chakras? Because when he was doing the same thing that I was doing, he said, Master didn't even use the word chakra. He called them the centers, the spiritual centers in your body. I said, oh, sure, chakras it's ordinary English now. And so now I can say, oh, look, the astral world, the setting the intention of the little blue bowling ball of a soul, knowing that it has a job to do in this world and that it's going to go down and do its job. Like, that is a really expanded idea. And it's right in the middle of pop culture. So what's right in the middle of pop culture tells you what the majority of people are already willing to accept, which means that anyone who's pushing on the front side of it, we're way out there, and that very soon the culture is going to come behind us. Swami would talk about the way society has changed. He said, that's like the river. There's the river of accepted world culture, and now it's world culture. The river of accepted world culture. He said, and then a few people, few relative to the whole planet, are inspired with new ideas, and they move over. Let's say they move forward. They move toward the ocean, is what we really want to say. They move a little closer to the ocean. And then after a time, it develops sufficient magnetism that the whole river moves over and starts running through that point. And then, of course, those who are destined to be leading, then they move over a little bit more. When I first moved to Palo Alto, meditation was odd. Now meditation is mainstream, so we have to move over. We have to move over to devotion to God, to love of Divine Mother, to Kriya Yoga, to self-realization. But the river is flowing in the direction that we're moving. Now, the other part of this, though, that this is to make this personal, that's just sort of isn't it interesting? And isn't that the good news? And maybe I'm a little slow to get the good news. I've never doubted that light was really growing in this world, because I can feel it and I can see it in countless respects. I felt like it was a Christmas present to me, a late Christmas present, to realize just how much light there is in this world, and how important it is for all of us to be very enthusiastic and exceedingly optimistic. Because even if it's over hill and over dale and maybe through some valleys on the way, the light is ascending. That is what's happening. Now, in the context of this, I was having several different conversations with individuals, emails and Zoom calls and that sort of thing. And I was observing how often it is that we take for granted what's good about us. And we have a tendency to think much more about the areas in which we're not as good as we would like to be. Now, on one hand, it's necessary to think like that. We don't want to rest on our laurels when our laurels are really too tiny to support us. We don't want to just sort of give up and say that everything is fine. We don't want to become like that exceedingly popular spiritual path that was part of my early years, where the so-called guru, and I have to say it like that, the so-called guru, his teaching, which was wildly popular, was just simply, well, If everything is made up of God, if Satchidananda is the power behind everything, then everything that you're doing is a part of God. So just keep on doing whatever you feel like doing, but just call it spiritual. And so people just kept on doing whatever they wanted to do, which was increasingly hedonistic and self-indulgent and over-sensual and wildly undisciplined. And they just called it a spiritual path. It was just a great bit of non-logic. And it was fine. I mean, it didn't have anything to do with me. We actually thought it was quite funny. It just wasn't exactly right. You have to, there is such a thing as a true goal in life, and there is such a thing as self-realization. And there is a pathway to self-realization, and it's a universal pathway. I mean, by no means does Ananda or anyone own it. Everybody's walking the same path. Everyone goes through the same stages of growth. And all of us live somewhere on that spectrum between complete delusion and absolute enlightenment. And if you're even thinking about enlightenment, if it's even crossed your mind that life has a purpose, and that purpose has to do with consciousness and expanding the consciousness, we've already been through a great deal. Someone was asking me about politics, about, how so many people could be enamored of these ideas, which to the person writing to me just seems so transparently wrong. How could anybody be involved in those ideas? I said, look, we're all on this journey. We're all just somewhere on the spectrum between delusion and enlightenment. And enlightenment is a state of consciousness. It's not a political affiliation or a non-affiliation or whatever it is. It's a state of consciousness. And everything along the way is a vibration of consciousness, a vibration that we think will increase our happiness and decrease our suffering. And everybody has an equal right to move through that spectrum. And these planets, the planet we're on and all these planets out here, they're all just some kind of pattern of light and shadow. And when we're the little bowling balls, little blue bowling balls in the astral world, we look at the whole planet, or we look at some other planet, and there's a magnetic attraction, and we go where we need to go. But it's not necessarily a magnetic attraction of pleasure. It's a magnetic attraction of the pleasure of expanding our consciousness, which is either painful or effortless, easy, enjoyable, or not. Just a whole lot of factors there. That's what everybody is doing. We're all just exactly the same. And if we find ourselves in close proximity or even global proximity to folks who are living in a very different vibration than ours, there's nothing surprising about that. We've been there, we've done that. If it's farther away from the ocean, or we will do it, we'll come to it. And so there is an importance, extremely important, to realize this isn't the final place. The way I thought about it one day is just a very simple question. Am I perfectly free and perfectly happy? Or do I still find myself compelled? And I find myself compelled just like, 40 times before breakfast. It's just, we just don't have, I wake up, I woke up hungry. It's like hungry. It's like, I had plenty of food yesterday. Why am I hungry this morning? But there it is, this physical compulsion, and the thought of breakfast starts playing in my mind. And sitting to meditate, and the mind wants to wander. And sort of thinking, how long shall I meditate? And the mind starts thinking of reasons why shorter would be better than longer. It just goes on and on and on. All of these things are just always at play with us. So we do have to, as Swami wonderfully put it, we have to put a rock in the river. You can't just be a leaf that just goes wherever the river tries to go. And of course, yes, eventually the river's going to the ocean, but the river can take a lot of detours along the way and hang out in a lot of whirlpools. You can't just float with the times. You have to use willpower and energy. You can't wait for Pixar to catch up we have to be out there a little bit ahead. My friend Michael Toms, who for many years ran New Dimensions Radio, and then his wife Justine, she may still run it. Michael passed a few years ago. And he was way in the front of what we then called the New Age. And Time magazine finally did a cover story on the New Age. And when it came up, Michael on his radio program was saying, he said, hear about it on New Dimensions Radio tonight, read about it in Time magazine 5 years from now, as if it was breaking news. But I remember what Michael said. He said, friends, we've got to be more than 5 years ahead of Time magazine. But by the time popular culture catches up, we need to be way, way in the next valley, just really going deeper and deeper in our own consciousness. And we need to know that, yes, there's a lot more that we have to accomplish, but we need to think more about the gifts that have already been given to us and the joy that God has already given to us and how fortunate we are and how rich our life is. And yes, by the grace of God, we'll get to be a little bigger. We'll get to do a little bit more. Maybe we'll get all the way to freedom. But that freedom will come to us so much more easily and so much more enjoyably if our sense of gratitude and appreciation and awareness of God's ever outpouring of grace on us, if we never lose sight of that. And it's a very fine line. And one of the sort of resolutions that really came to me from the Pixar movie was, the times are changing, the times are good, and Master's message is being heard. This is something that I picked up and became involved in my early 20s. It was the cause that I was born to serve. It's just as simple as that. I myself say it very openly. I never did anything with my life until I really found Ananda. And I knew that I had something I was supposed to do. I knew there was something I was supposed to do. Let me phrase it differently. It wasn't like I had a personal destiny. I knew that there must be something that I would really want to do. And I was very anxious because I didn't see it. I didn't see it at all until I saw it completely. It's like I knew about self-realization, but I still didn't know what I was really going to do with my life. So I've done my whole life working on my own self-realization and working very hard for the sake of others. And the good news is, friends, in this weird 2020 year, just exactly what Master said, it is happening. It's really happening. It's happening in a big way. Yes, there's a lot that is breaking apart. And I believe there's going to be a lot more that's going to be breaking apart. Master promised that the earth itself could actually hiccup in some really big ways. And the comfortable little worlds that we have may be really, really shifted. But Master said, essentially, be of good cheer. Jesus, one of my favorite lines from Jesus is, the world won't love you because you're my disciple. The world may turn against you. But then Jesus says, but be of good cheer. I have conquered the world. That's how Jesus said. I thought, well, that is really good news. And that's really, that feels to me like that's the message on this last day of 2020. Yes, it's like the world is kind of it's kind of an interesting place right now. We don't know where it's going, and someone like myself does not necessarily feel in tune with a great deal that's going on out there. It's just, I just listened to, I was just watching on Facebook a little advertisement for something that I favor, and the soundtrack for it was one of those, what they call a loop tape, which is self-explanatory. And it was just Rajasic noise, just energetic, and then the advertisement for the thing, just keep moving but don't go anywhere kind of energy. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of that. This was, relatively speaking, benign But no, that's not who we are. Master said, yeah, the difficulties are going to come, and difficulties have started for a lot of people. My own life is still intact, but a lot of people's lives has broken in ways that nobody knows if it's going to come back. Thousands of people have been ill, and thousands of people have died. It's like times are changing. But Master said, don't worry, don't worry. The only point of all of this is to bring us all to God. And if you actually were just sitting there and saying, at the end of whatever this dark valley might be, if it looks like a dark valley to us, if at the end of it is infinite light and infinite freedom, wouldn't I eagerly step into the valley? And would I even count it as a dark valley? Oh yeah, it might take, willpower, and it might be inconvenient, and there might be days and nights of hunger and cold. I woke up hungry, but I can have breakfast. There might be days and nights of real hunger and real cold. But if I know at the end of it is the bright light of spirit, why would I even call this dark? It's just like, let's just think differently. Let's just turn things in a different direction. Not insincerely, not inauthentically, not suppressing our real perceptions. I insist perhaps sometimes too much on just being realistic, because suppression to me is a more terrifying fault than a little bit too focused on the reality of things. But let us always remember where we're going, so that even where we are, it won't make that much difference. It's just, we can handle anything as long as it's temporary. Jyotish gave me that advice many years ago. He said, I can take anything, is what he said, as long as it's temporary. And he said, and when you stop to think about it, everything is temporary. Just everything is temporary. And in between, we go into these fun astral world. Pixar's image of it is not inconsistent with Master's. It's not exactly letter for letter, atom for atom, and the little souls looking like blue bowling balls is it's so original. But why not? Why not just feel it with that kind of lighthearted joy? Well, I know why not, because I have countless vrittis that tell me that I can't be that free. But why not? Master said, if you think yourself free, if you declare with absolute conviction, I am free, you'll be free in that moment. And then one of his disciples said, but sir, if I just said I was free, I wouldn't be free, would I? And Master said, well, you just answered your own question. But let's try to find a new answer to that question. It's all temporary. Everything is temporary compared to eternity. Once when Swamiji was really unwell, physically unwell, and I came to visit him in Europe, and I expressed sympathy. How are you feeling, Swamiji? Oh, he said, compared to eternity, he said, all time is short. Nothing matters. And really everything has to be compared to eternity. But even in the short range, things are looking down and simultaneously looking up. Because the only purpose of everything that happens to us is to bring us closer to God. So let that be, however we phrase that, let that be our 2021. Oh, I know what happened in 2020, which got even stronger in 2021. I grew much closer to God. Doesn't that make every year absolutely the best year we've ever had? It's very much in our own hands. Divine Mother is blowing the winds of grace across this world. Let us open our sails and sail along with her. God bless you.